Know what it is? It's another episode. You don't have to be perfect. I got the man in the house.
You just gotta get started. Don't overthink it. Just go where your heart is, turn your dreams and your goals. Let your goals shape how you live. Success is inevitable if you're willing to give up your old self to become someone new, to be the true you. Never be afraid to do you in front of the critics, sideline judges, non-believers, people holding their grudges. Appreciate the hate. It comes with the win. When your wise making the money, you're unstoppable from the beginning. Your excuses are useless. Let your actions be part of the solution and watch the income it produces. Recognize greatness, a supreme revelation. Years of blood, sweat, and tears to become an overnight sensation. Can't do it alone. I should have said this first. Teamwork always makes the dream work. Teamwork always makes the dream work.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is another episode of You Don't Have Perfect, but today's episode super special to me. We have on the house today a royal bay to some, coach to others, dad to many, mentor to most, my brother, DJ Meltdown. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
I don't think you guys really understand, and before we go into why this is really so special to me, that intro that you've heard, that you've been hearing for 2 seasons, I don't know how he allowed me to get away with it. But for 2 seasons, the intro that you've been hearing was produced by none other than DJ Meltdown. So, DJ Meltdown, I want to thank you personally because this show wouldn't have kicked off in the manner that it kicked off without your help. When we started this show, you know this, but many people don't know, my ex-wife was coming out of a coma, and I didn't do any business for 4 months, 3 or 4 months, and just helping nursing her back to life. And then we wanted to do something to be a help. Now, and we said, you just got to get started, right? You don't have to be perfect. You just got to get started.
Yeah.
And then we came up with, I need an intro, right? Because how do you have a good show without a great intro? And you gave me so many amazing tracks to try to come out of retirement from, because I don't think most people know that's me on the intro. I wrote the song, wrote the intro, and was blessed enough to record the intro at your son's studio to make it a your thing. Went from one lockjaw to another lockjaw, right? So it was so amazing to have you provide that music. So before we go into anything else, I wanted to say thank you.
I appreciate you.
Thank you not only for providing the music, but this guy has been providing the soundtrack for the last 30 years. We met in, let's date ourselves, right? Don't let this black hair, that's why I ain't shaved my face. I was going to get a fresh haircut, but I ain't shaved my face, so you realize that I'm not lying about my age, right? We met and did our first show together in 1997.
That is correct.
Right? We made history together in 1997 by promoting, hosting, and putting the work in for the very first hip hop show held in this city, major hip hop show. KRS One, Mad Lion, you know, came to our city, but more importantly, the people really came out to see Lockjaw Styles,
Yeah.
right? Like the production that you were putting out at the time, and then at that time, you were giving a man by the name of Quinones. Others know him as GQ,
Gee,
right? You gave him first major stage. Then that went on for that because it was my show, and you guys were last before KRS One, right? And that and, and we're talking about young Pass, ego out of control Pass, right? For you to convince me that you should go on after our crew, first of all, was amazing because I can sell an Eskimo snow, right? And second of all, was the right thing, right? Sometimes we don't know what the right thing is, especially when we're young.
yeah,
Um, I was 21, maybe 22 at the time.
yes,
So
sir.
my ego says I'm the best rapper in the world. You know, my demo tape said I was close to it. I had being from Harlem. We had a bunch of people, Cam, Mace, G Dep, everybody was on the demo, right? But we were in your city and you were setting a sound, and what you said was the right thing. GQ should be last because we're in his home. I think that messaging was so important because it put a pride in this city that I still hasn't seen like grow to the level it should. We do have certain people now screaming certain things like Red McFly now screaming Allentown. But before then, when people made it, they would say I'm from Brooklyn, I'm from Philly, I'm from anywhere other than Allentown.
Yeah, the name is not is what we call parts unknown. Nobody wanted to claim it.
And I love that because you represent it like no one else. Oh yeah, I don't know if y'all can get a full view of the hat that he has on, right? Area 610. So why do you feel outside of the history? We'll go back to the history. But why do you feel it's so important to represent the 610 in the manner in which you do?
Oh, when we started, um, there was not many people that was, trying to make efforts to come out into the industry. Um, I mean, we had maybe like maybe three different crews. There was Gun for Hire, Red Army, and us. And most of the time, I spent most of my time in the city at ASCAP and going to those places to get our music heard. Um, and I just felt that the talent that came out of this area, and is still coming out of this area, or that has developed in this area, is really high grade talent. We just haven't had the right spotlight. Thanks for Red McFly. Right now, I caught myself up in Times Square watching him up on the screen with his, I think it was Washout or something like that. Was
Mm-hmm.
that the joint that he dropped up there? I saw the whole video up there, and that was our goal. And you know, it's kind of good that that he didn't stop and he kept pumping it out there. I mean, it's it's a lot more advantage when you can write and you can produce. than rather just produce. Because a lot of people they want to hear music, but they don't want to hear instrumentals. They want to hear substance to it. So to be a writer and to be a producer, um, I think that was the formula that we needed to be able to do. So I think Rebel Fly did like a Kanye West on us out here. He produced and wrote, and he started putting us on the map in this area. I mean, as far as we got, as far as Lockjaw, we did Power 99, Make It or Break It. We were on there like 6 weeks straight until we got taken out by Eclipse when they came out with Grinding. And they killed it. They did a free concert that weekend in Philly, and they ended up beating us, but we didn't lose by much. But that was the most recognition that we ever got around here, other than doing the show at the theater up there on Sixth Street with opening up for KRS One. I mean, that was like one of the main highlights that we've had prior to letting someone outside the area hear what we were doing.
Uh, I don't think people caught what you said though. You said Lockjaw Styles was on Power 99 for 6 weeks,
6 weeks
and you got beat out by Eclipse.
by Eclipse.
But people don't realize that was the Clip's first name. That's Pusha T,
Okay.
Malice, who later, right, became some of the biggest names in the world. So do you feel bad now?
No,
Knowing that you were pushed out by Pusha T and Malice, and Grinding became a huge hit.
that was
That became
huge.
a platinum song, right? And it was, think about it now. Pusha T now, 20 years later, is still, top notch. So to get knocked out by
Yeah,
the Clips or Eclipse at the time, right?
Eclipse.
Is
Yeah,
it is something amazing. It was funny. I was watching Elliot Ness, Ness, battle somebody recently, and I still remember Elliot Ness battling Ike Turner with a burner. You
yeah,
know, one of my young guns,
yeah,
right? So really working hard to put this city on the map 20 years ago, and I don't want people to pass that, right? Because you pivoted because you were always a DJ to be able to put the city on the map in many other ways.
yes, sir.
So people may not always remember DJ Meltdown as the production head that he's amazingly done, but how many people see that chain, right? See this ring, right? And know, who DJ Meltdown is. How many, like, because you've been double off for how long?
I'm going on 15 and a half years with them.
15 and a half years with Rough Riders, and you've held different positions,
Yeah,
across different counties, and it really took our city to the biker world, right? In a way that hasn't been done. No disrespect to other biker crews that's in our city. Shout out to Thunder Guards and all the ones that are
yes, sir.
here. But you took,
Lone Riders.
yeah, you took our city to other cities. I still remember me, you know, Wadeen from Rough Riders, and all those, the CEO, the president, because you were actually a Rough Rider. You weren't someone who was just putting on the jacket. You know, you were actually someone who could walk us in and introduce us to other people outside the valley. But you never stopped to say, I'm, even though you was raised and born in the Bronx, you never stopped instead to take your eye off the piece that you represented to this valley. How important was that to you?
Um, I think that was very important, um, due to the fact that I've always let people know that I was born and raised in the Bronx, but um, people don't know that while I was growing up in the Bronx during the early '70s, early from like early '72 to like almost like '79, I was being dropped off here in parts unknown, aka Area 6110, Allentown, for 2 weeks at a time to spend time with my grandparents who've been living here since like the early 50s. And when I when I came here, I met a lot of people. It was just a lot different. One thing I'm gonna tell you the truth, and the fact of the matter is that in the Bronx at the time that I was growing up, Asiatic brothers still with Asiatic brothers, Spanish individuals still with Spanish individuals, and white boys, or should I say, white American, they hung out by themselves. So it was like it was crazy because of the fact that um, we were segregated, in our own way in the Bronx due to the things that were going on at the time. Um, but when I came out here, what found me that I loved the most was there was no boundaries to friends in ethnic backgrounds here. I seen, white American, Spanish, and an Asiatic rode together, and they all rode together hard. But why? Because they lived in Cumberland, or they lived in the Acres, or they lived in Little Lehigh. But they all three came from that thing, so they moved together as a unit, which was something that was really impressive with me because I was like, wow, if you can out like basically destroy the boundary line between friendship due to ethnic background, we became more powerful. And so-called the underground set when we first started that. I mean, we had, you know, I came from New York. I was a b-boy, and I actually turned Say One into the first. Uh, we always considered him, a white American, but at the same time, he was part Italian. So he held to all his roots. But he was the first one that really came out here and blasted a lot of people out, showed them that BX style, and he just took with it and ran with it. And then it was me and him, and that was perfect example of like when I was visiting here, how I saw that there was no boundaries between friendship when it came into ethnic background. That when I came here, the first person that I connected with was the Say One, and then
Rest
I
in
think
peace.
from there, I met Power D, and then from Power D, we moved into DJ Express, and then from DJ Express, Chris Quake. Actually, Chris Quake came before DJ Express that I met, and then we had Red, and we had a lot of people that But MUC, we had Matt. You know what I mean? So right in there in itself, just to, like let you know that that little coalition that came together was diverse in such a way, you know what I mean? And we never even looked at it as let's diverse ourselves. We looked at it as more of a friendship and more of a connection thing, and how we made moves together, and we were able to, create things, with each other. You know what I mean? Like, you see that me and DJ Express before it was Catch 22 was the chess club, and then we used to have like close to like maybe 1,500, 2,000 people there on a weekend event from Friday to Saturday, and then once Mayor Afflerbach fought us out, and and pressured our landlord to remove us from there, or they were going to do all kinds of fire code inspections and all that. Sent out the door, and then right when we were sent out the door, you know, another family that I've been friends with for the longest time is the Riddicks. Bobby Riddick and I then ended up opening up the bridge,
Mm-hmm.
and then we ended up not only um, running the bridge, but we were having just as much people that Catch 22 was having. And then when we were let out at the end of the night, we were damn near almost had like 1,500 to 2,000 people sitting in the middle of American Parkway, just sitting out there, things. And then we did that for a while, and then the mayor turned around and put pressure on our landlord. That was one thing that me and Lo took the time and just bought a building and just did what we were doing. But always ended up renting. The same with BR. We always ended up renting, and the city has a way of putting pressure on landlords in this area to move an object that they don't want no longer in the area. So, but we lasted almost, well, it was like almost 5 years with the chess club, and then we did another 5 years with 5 or 6 years with the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, we had some good moments in the area that just let me know that this is where I want to represent, and if I get to the point where I can represent this area, then I will let the Bronx know that I'm here,
I love that.
rather than telling everybody I'm from the Bronx and I'm representing here. I'll represent here and then let the Bronx know, like, bruh, I am a product of your environment. This was the seed that was planted in me, and I just kept it moving and came here. And even though we were distance away, the knowledge and the experience and everything that came around with it, the culture, the lifestyle, stuck with me and grew within me. And as you can see, we have a lot of individuals out there that are trying to do the same thing in this area, you know, um, create a wider path. Like we created a path, and they're opening it up for more people to be able to come through and make it happen. And I'm happy for that.
And I love and I don't want to go past any of the things that you said because you said a couple of things. Um, First of all, big shout out to DJ Express, because man to own a nightclub in this city.
Yes,
You
he was.
know, uh, well, so that was amazing. But what you said that I don't want to miss was you said knowing what we know now, right? We would have bought a building, right? Because uh, the reasons that we weren't able to keep the spaces and the places that we were doing greatness in is because we may have owned the business, but we didn't own the property.
That's
So
perfect.
having different levels of ownership, and understanding that,
That's correct.
and that's so key, especially when we're talking to this next generation, because if we'd have known, like we how many times did we get tricked out of our spot, right? Because we own the intellectual property, which is still valuable, right?
Hmm.
But we didn't own the actual property because we didn't understand sometimes our worth and sometimes its worth, right?
Yeah.
So I think so because we were all young, like none of us were over 30 when we were figuring this out, because
No,
you're not much older than me.
I was in my 20s when we
Yeah,
doing
we
this
were
stuff.
all in our 20s trying to figure it out. We were young parents, so we also had responsibility, right? We were young entrepreneurs, right? And we were figuring it out along the way, because Lorenzo was the first nightclub. I was really the first legitimate LLC promotion company.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we were a real promotion company, you know, and before the start of the 2000s,
Yes, sir.
so
Yes,
that's
sir.
I can say I know we did it first.
Yeah.
right? But there were so many mistakes that happened, right?
Oh yeah.
Because we did it first, right? Navigating and not knowing how to work with the city instead of you talking about how Afflerbach shut us down a few times. And there have been a few names. He was the first one. So, but because we didn't understand policies and politics,
Yeah.
right? One of the things we were laughing about, which isn't which isn't funny, but we're laughing about how determined you were at a young age. Because shout out to Old Dirty Bastard, right? So I'm gonna, and the reason I shout out to Old Dirty Bastard of the Wu Tang, because he's the original one man army A song. Like Meltdown would say, hey, I don't believe in this rule. I don't believe in this policy. We're gonna shut down all four corners of Hamilton. And I said, Meltdown, who's we? You say, me and you. Yo, and I'm like, we're the protest? It's like, yes, I'm gonna be in the house making signs. What time are you gonna get there?
We got a lot of people's attention that day. They came and signed our petition.
Oh
That
man.
was crazy. I mean, but I wanted to send a message there that it takes one person or fleet full of people. If you believe in something, just go out there and let it be known that what they're doing is incorrect. You know, you don't need an entourage to send a message. You can just send a message just by being that one person that cares. And you'd be amazed how many people drive by and like, yeah, I feel just like that. And I want to sit out there and do that. But I'm afraid my boss might do this, or I'm afraid that I may be targeted, or I might be. Me, I didn't care about my employment. I didn't care about anything. All I cared was about our constitutional rights, the Bill of Rights, our rights to freedom of expression, and to have that freedom of peaceful assembly. And whether you have a permit or not, you set camp because protest in a peaceful manner does not require a person to get a permit because if a person believes in the right to travel, they have the right to the highways and the byways. And that's your byways. The sidewalk, that's you. There is no limitation. There is nothing that hinders you from being able to stand in the corner and sit there and say, God is good. Our president is whatever. You know what I mean? It's whatever you choose that you feel that is incorrect in life. And if you want to try to do something, you got to understand that every movement starts from a small movement. So it takes one person to move that rock. And then when that one person sees another person struggling with that one rock and he decides, I'm going to get behind him, you got a bunch of people now pushing this boulder down the hill. But at first, it started off with a person just having an idea to be there.
And that's so important. That's why when I say you've been pushing the soundtrack to this valley for over 30 years, it's bigger than the music, right? Like I still remember I'm like, Meltdown. Are you really gonna do this protest by yourself? And you're like, yes, I already got all four corners. All my paperwork is done. And you literally had signs on all four corners as you protested in the middle by yourself, you know, and and there were so many people, and this is why I always give you the utmost respect because there were so many people that they were going to support you. Even myself at one point didn't give you all that I had. You know what I mean? We all,
You
but
gave me the spark.
I
You
get,
showed up the first day.
you know,
That's
and,
all that mattered on that thing. You showed up the other ones, but just being that person there helped me be there and just get it sparked. That was enough. I was like, I had enough support,
and
just
and
like
that
that.
and what I want to, and the reason I bring that up is because, especially now, we just went through, our city had, like every other city, had Lives Matter protests, come to the city. And, you know, when I said Black Lives Matter didn't have the same impact in our city as it would with other cities, not, and people like, I'm like, our issues are our issues, but they're not the same as everyone else's,
Yes.
right? So uh, when outsiders came to protest in our city, you know, their protest was incorrect because we weren't saying fuck the police at that moment, right? Because we actually had a police chief we chose. Glenn Granite was chosen by the people, you know, at that time. He was literally put in, even though he wasn't a black or brown person, he was put in by black and brown people, you know. So his relationship was different, sort of like now with attorney, you know, there's a different relationship with his connection to the community, right? So of course there's always going to be issues,
Yes.
right? For black, white, orange, especially black in this community, right? But our issues and what the issues that are going on in the nation is slightly different,
Definitely slightly different.
you know. Um, and what I think about Allentown, actually, not even what I think, what I know about Allentown is Allentown provides a light to where America's going to go, whether it's a light to darkness or a light to get brighter, right? Because a lot of the laws, that were enforced across the nation were first tested here. You know, federal laws for how they deal, carrying a unlicensed gun. You know, the that was tested here in Allentown. The bullets being charged a year for each bullet. Under Jim Martin, that was tested here first and shot out to other places. You know, so knowing that we set this tone, right? But it's a tone that comes with little pride,
Yeah.
you know, which is also a microcosm of America, right? Because many people, except for major cities like a New York or Philadelphia, or name a major city, says their chest out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like born in Harlem, I raised my kids in the Lehigh Valley. I've been in the Lehigh Valley for a long time, but I will quickly remind you, I was born in Harlem Hospital. I am from Harlem.
Yes,
You
sir.
know,
Just so you
because
know,
there was some
New
project.
York is UCC 1-207, and in Pennsylvania it's 13 PA Concept 307. See how the changes go? But if you live in both worlds, you got to know both worlds so you know the rules of the game. So if you are part of where you're living, know where you're from, where you're at, and how the laws apply to you and don't apply to you.
That is so key, so key. Because even though he's DJ Meltdown, I didn't want to just poo past, right, the the impact that you've made in this community outside of music. The changes that you've helped spark, and movements that you've been a part of that people may not always know, because we think success a lot of times in dollar value, instead of thinking success and impact.
Understood. Yeah.
Like
Understood.
your impact,
Overstood.
right, is greater than your dollar value because we have a generation of hip hoppers that were influenced by your sound. And even if they're not, they're touched by your son, whose sound, no matter how you equate to it or not, his name is still Junior. We may not, we're not gonna give his name to the world, you know what I mean? But it's still Junior, right? So that sound, to the point where he still calls his company Lockjaw.
Well, he grew up around everybody from that camp. And just like you said, we all have families at that time. Well, most of my MCs was around my two daughters and my son. And when I had to leave the studio, was to cook for them, take care of them, assure their schoolwork was right. And then once they were correct, then I went back into that studio room and the fellas were still in the lab, moving forward and producing. And then I'll go in there and get my input. And I mean, I guess that's how he picked it up, because he definitely didn't like to be in the studio when he was young.
But now, I mean, now he's probably one of the most influential pieces to the valley, right? Because outside of being a rapper, outside of being a producer, he is a engineer, right? And that is so necessary. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Like, so when we think about the current sound that is coming out of the valley, most of the biggest records was mixed by your son.
There you go.
Like, in all humility, right?
Yes, sir.
Like most of the biggest records, I mean, shoot, what all of my favorite songs that Red has right now were mixed by your son. You know what I mean? And then the rise of Strand Boys and so many other people. Dot Mully, all of these guys that are making a huge impact outside of the valley as well as inside of the valley. You know, without having a good engineer, like for music people, right? The difference between a good engineer and a terrible song is so huge because you can have the best song in the world, but if it's not mixed right, it's still horrible to the ear. It actually is offensive
Yeah.
to the ear, right? So your son is, even the songs he's not producing, he's mixing to make a pleasing sound that's now leading the valley. So when I say you're the soundtrack to the valley, it's all of those things,
Appreciate you.
you know, all of those things. Because at any moment you could have stopped, but you also still produce. We do this show, and if like I said, I don't know how you let me get away with that. For 2 seasons, we've been playing an intro that you produced.
I appreciate that.
So when people are hearing, you don't have to be perfect. You just got to get started. They're hearing your sound. Your sound has been the intro to some amazing conversations, and we've had some awesome conversations to inspire people. After everyone is nodding to your sound, right? Not knowing, you know, that this was another DJ Meltdown special, you know, and that's so important that we talk about that. But you have an, you've also been the backbone for this hip hop on the wall exhibit that we've been doing. So we couldn't, man, we couldn't get away with what we've been able to get away with without your sound, right? Our opening night was probably one of the most amazing things this valley has ever seen, you know, and people don't realize that you kept the soundtrack and the tune so that everyone was comfortable, right? In the room, we had gang members, we had criminals, we had politicians, we had the district attorney, all of these people all in the room. We had wealthy people in the room. We had, and no one felt out of place because you kept the tone, right? You
Appreciate
set a sound. You set a sound that people are still talking about. Man, like that. You pulled out songs that we missed, right?
it.
Uh, you allowed us not only to be taken away by the art, but to be taken away by the atmosphere.
Appreciate you, man. Big time. Thank you.
You know, and you have an amazing event. You have an amazing event coming up. You know, on Thursday, something that this valley's never seen or heard before.
And I'm nervous. Believe that. That's crazy. I'm nervous because this is a whole new idea. We are stepping into a whole new platform. It's just gonna be so. If this happens the way it needs to be, I really am nervous because I have a feeling that this is gonna be a high demand type of performance, and I have a feeling that after it's seen, it will be duplicated, replicated. People are going to try to do what they do. And some people out there that can make music on the spot. It's just you're going to have to find the right formula, the right artist with the right producer. And I'm hoping that me and Caddy Mike, you know, we have not spoke. Well, we spoke one time since we found out that we're going to be doing it together. So when we go there on Thursday, it's almost as if we're seeing each other for like maybe three times in the time that we've met. So whatever magic, whatever occurs there, whatever
It's all going to be authentic.
everything is, I really like. I don't even know what I'm going to do. I just been home pulling music out just so that when I'm ciphering through what I'm ciphering through, that I see, I hear something that that complements what I'm seeing, and then from there, all hell is gonna break loose.
That's awesome. So for those who don't know, DJ Meltdown will be the sound curator for the mixes and masterpiece event that's going on this Thursday. So this Thursday, 5:30 p.m. we have Caddy Mike who'll be painting live, while DJ Meltdown will be producing live to have the ultimate creatives event. We know I create once. They are the creators around here, but I try to show every once in a while I can let my elbows out, right? And we create too. So hip hop on the wall will be presenting mixes and masterpieces, which will be the most exciting creative event done in
What
this
do we
valley.
call audio art meets visual art?
Yes, audio art meets visual art, which just, complements, right, the historic nature of this exhibit. You
Yes, sir.
know, uh, this exhibit, has been a blessing. One, shout out to Art House, my co-curators, Deb and John, um, for really allowing us to bring together world-renowned artists, right, as well as local legends to put together to create something amazing, you know, and then to really put the icing on the cake, you know, our big brother, pulled out from his personal collection, you know, an original Andy Warhol
Oh
to
yeah,
throw on the wall, you know,
that was historical.
you know. So, and then this whole thing has been historic, right? And that's why we have to do mixes and masterpieces because our art book is the first art book that has a full soundtrack, paintings in it, and lyrics. People have done one or two, but nobody's done all three, you know. So, adding on to what we've always done, over the past 30 years is create history, you
Yeah,
know, mixes and masterpieces. No one would have done that here. I can't say it's never been done in the world, you know, but no one's gonna do it like you're doing it, right? And
appreciate.
it's the first one ever done in the valley. So we're making history for our city again
Yes,
to
sir.
show that audio art and visual art can come together to create magic.
Yes, yes, I appreciate that. That's gonna be different. Like I said, I'm nervous for it, and I don't get nervous that easy. You know what I mean? Especially when it comes down to music, art, because I've been doing it for so long. I feel like it's just second nature. But this is the first of its kind. The first.
And it's okay to be nervous. Um, that's actually rather healthy that you're nervous with doing something for the first time. It's funny. We used to always talk about my leg, how it shake before I did something the first time, but after you get started, the flow from the excitement of actually doing it because this is something that you worked hard to bring into fruition. This is something that you thought about. This is to go from concept to actual creation, you know, and it's going to be dope that both the audio art and the visual art will be able to be purchased at the end of the night.
That is correct.
There'll be an auction, right, for both. Are you going to auction them separately, or is it going to be is
It
it going
has
to
to
be a
be a
package?
package because if there would be no audio art if it was no visual art, and there would have been no visual art without the audio art. So it has to come together as a package. So it would be as a as something that someone can play while they're watching the actual art in their home.
That is awesome. While they're sitting back and enjoying the visual art on their wall, they could be listening to the audio art that inspired it.
That probably would never be reduplicated, so they would have a copy of the main original layout. So what you have there, no one will ever hear unless you allow them to hear
Oh man, that's awesome. Wu Tang secret album stuff.
it.
You know,
Yeah,
where
that right there is up to them, whatever they wish to do with it. I could even um, make sure that it's patented properly so that wherever they play it, or if they choose to do so, that it would never get torn down, and they could um, encrypt it. And if they get a bunch of hits on it, they can make money off of the video and the thing, or they could sell it as an NFT or whatever they wish to do. Their choice.
that's awesome. So not only are they going to be creating something that's amazing, the actual once the creation is done, the owner will actually have true ownership. So what he's saying, and that's huge to understand in music, because you know you can lease a track, you can buy a track, and still never own a track,
That is correct.
right? Where it'll be owned by the creator, it may be owned by the record label, depending on when you received it, who passed it to you, but you may never own it. So to actually own a visual piece of art and an audio piece of art and to take it home with you, is awesome, awesome. And then we're blessed because on Friday we also get to celebrate
Yeah,
the underground set. You know, the only hip hop store we've ever had in this area, and and celebrate the diversity that you were just talking about. Right? The I think what was funny, right? When I first came to the valley, one of the things that I thought was the most unique about it is some of the things that you said. How there really was no boundaries. You know, but it was one of the things that people didn't take pride in.
yeah,
There really were no boundaries because you think about people like our boy Mel, representing on the bikes,
yeah,
skateboards, bikes. They were in Tony Hawk's original video game, and that showed the diversity in the valley, right?
yeah.
Because there was black, white, Spanish guys all in that crew, and they
Hmm.
were all in that video game. But because we didn't take pride in our city, no one even paid attention to acknowledge that that was going on.
Yeah,
You know, so I'm grateful that you took us back to get people to understand what makes this area beautiful. What makes this area beautiful is not just the diversity, but the ability to live and function diversely, right? This is a great city where it's not racism, it's placism most times, and that you know a lot of times it's who you know, what you know, and how much money you have.
yeah. This city's more of the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah,
Not anything else is not a factor. Is either you got finances or you don't, and they give you ample of opportunities to maybe create your finances to put your place in the area. But it's up to you to create your platform
yes,
for what you want to do.
yes,
Find yourself and then go from there.
yes. So to be able to have, you know, you on this journey with us for Hip Hop on the Wall as we've been creating history, and to know that, you know, you're going to give this city, I had a great conversation with someone earlier today. And what she said is, we've been curating what's been missing, and most people didn't even know they were missing it. Right?
Pretty.
That's really powerful,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Right? Because people aren't, something like what you're talking about. You'll see it in Miami, maybe at an Art Basel, or you may see in LA. But to have that kind of creativity in our city, to have that kind of creativity, you know, come together, you know, is unheard of, and to see it in a major art gallery, we're not hiding in a corner, we're not being put in a, in a space where you can't see us, but we're being celebrated on Hamilton Street, which is, if you're watching from outside of the Allentown area, that's our major street for Harlem. That's like 125th Street, you know. So, that's our major street. And for us to be celebrating you, your legacy, and enjoying your current creativity,
Hmm.
right, is going to be amazing,
Appreciate you.
right?
Appreciate you. Yes, sir.
And it was so important that we, you know, and God doesn't make mistakes, right? Because this conversation was supposed to happen today, even though it wasn't planned until earlier today,
I
right?
feel you.
It was supposed to happen today, you know. It was supposed to be where people know that they can come and see your greatness, so they can come celebrate your greatness, but also an opportunity for me to give you your flowers
I appreciate
at
you.
a moment where you need them most, right? Because it's easy to give somebody flowers when they can't see them, you know, flowers when they can't celebrate them, flowers when they can't notice them. But to give you your flowers and to remind people that you have been the soundtrack for this community for 30 years. Some people don't even know where they got their fight from. They just know they threw a punch, right? So I'm letting people know where you got your fight from, right? There are people right now that don't even know. We got to see a couple second generation hip hoppers work on music together, right? And they didn't even know that they were second generation,
Yeah, that
right?
was,
Until they were sitting around you as as a master creator, and you were able to pour some history back into their creation to link them together. you know. So when I talk about you being a soundtrack, you know, even though you don't produce as much as you used to for others, you produce for passion projects now.
yes, yes, I do.
Um, your legacy never lets up because your son still lives on and he's still doing and it's funny, right? It's not the same, but it is the same, right? Because I see so much of your passion at that age in him. It comes off differently, but I still see and feel that passion, and to know that the music didn't die, right? And although one pit bull didn't get to the level of success others may think is success. The success in which he leveled allowed that other pit bull to bite harder,
Mm, got you.
right?
Yes, sir.
Right. So I never want you to say that we didn't get there. You got exactly where you needed to be to inspire others to keep going. And then you still have more to give, right?
Appreciate you. Yes, sir.
You still have more to give. You still have more to create. There's still more life to you, right? But, right, somebody has to crawl for others to walk. Somebody has to walk for others to run, right? So your crawl didn't go unnoticed, right? Your walk didn't go without a stride, and now your son is running, right? None of those happened if you didn't crawl and walk first, right? We don't even have a space where a red McFly can be on a hot 97 if Lockjaw and Guns for Hire didn't go to Power 99, right? We don't have a space for people to even listen, right, to the sound that's coming out of here if there wasn't a sound coming out of here. And for a long time, whether the rest of the world knew it, that sound was yours,
Appreciate you.
right? And I can say, as someone who was a sound curator from a different space, right, that sound was still yours because your sound was here before us and sound stayed here after us, you know, you
Appreciate
know, and that was so big to know, say, and do. So I tell you, this hour goes by quickly as it did. Um, I want you to be able to tell people how to find you, if how to reach out to you if you want, or how, whatever it is you want to share with the world, on how, whether it's your Area 610 music, whether it's production. I don't want them to miss the opportunity to work with you in the manner in which you're working now.
Contact me through Paz, and you could also go on my website www.area6310music.com. Put that all together, lowercase, and I have an Instagram account under Lockjaw, and I have a Facebook account under Arroyo Bay. Um, and that's pretty much about as simple as it is to get to me, or come into my town.
Yes, sir. And make sure you come out at Art House, 645 Hamilton Street, this Thursday to see him produce live while Caddy Mike is painting live and mixes and masterpieces. And then come out for our, closing ceremony on Friday at 5:30 at Art House. After party here at the Moxie, where we film live every Monday. But after party here as we celebrate the underground set and all that it has meant to our community, to hip hop, and what it means to hip hop on the wall. So, Meltdown, I'm going to ask you to do what we've done with all of our guests before we close out our show, and that's say my personal manifesto. I'm going to say it all the way through, and I'm not going to ask you to remember it. Then we're going to do it like call and response so you can say it. So, my personal manifesto is simple. I love me. I'm worthy. Some people may not like me, but I don't care because the people that matter will be glad that I'm here. Don't worry, I'll do it first, call and response. I love me.
I love me.
I'm worthy.
I'm worthy.
Some people may not like me,
Some people may not like me.
but I don't care
I don't care
because the people that matter
because the people that matter
will be glad that I'm here.
are glad that I'm here.
And I am glad that you spent this hour with us, DJ Meltdown. We were glad that we were able to tell the world about your awesomeness. We are glad that you have been and still are the soundtrack for the Lehigh Valley for the last 30 years. We are grateful that we have had you as part of Hip Hop on the Wall. We are glad that you are going to be doing mixes and masterpieces. We are humbled to be able to celebrate you on July 11th to end off this amazing exhibit. And we are so grateful that you didn't have to be perfect, but you didn't hesitate to get started. So, DJ Meltdown, on that note, I'm going to give you the last word.
Peace, power.
But it is peace, power. See us next week as we have my brother Jose Rivera on, and we're going to give you another great story. This is You Don't Have to Be